Imagine for a moment a creature unlike any you have ever known, a being so hungry for happiness that every crumb of pleasure you feed it explodes into a banquet of bliss inside its mind. But here is the unsettling twist. This creature's capacity for joy dwarfs yours, mine, and perhaps the joy of every human who has ever lived combined. Give it a single cookie, it feels 10,000 units of delight. Give it a city's worth of cookies, the numbers soar beyond measurement. Now picture an ethics committee entrusted with deciding how to distribute the world's limited cookies, and one voice rises to proclaim, calmly, logically, we must serve the creature first, because each cookie creates far more happiness in its belly than in any of yours. Suddenly the committee frowns, the air thick with awkward silence as the chilling implication settles in. If happiness is our sole compass, should we not divert every resource, every heartbeat, every spare second to this insatiable utility monster? Today we investigate that question, a question that slices through the heart of utilitarianism, the moral theory that urges us to maximize total happiness. On the surface it sounds noble, almost obvious. Create the greatest good for the greatest number. Yet when the arithmetic of happiness meets the darker edges of imagination, things turn eerie very fast. The utility monster is our first exhibit, conjured by philosopher Robert Nozick to test utilitarian logic under pressure. If a single being enjoys things more intensely than everyone else, then, mathematically, morality demands we sacrifice everyone else's modest joys for its colossal ones. But wait, is that really the ethical high ground, or have we stumbled into a moral swamp? To solve this riddle, we will gather testimony from 3 philosophical witnesses, each with a different story to tell. First on the stand, the utilitarian. They straighten their jacket, clear their throat, and remind us of a simple principle championed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Happiness can be tallied, suffering can be tallied, and our duty is to choose the action that tips the balance toward joy. Pleasure minus pain, a moral ledger written in emotional currency. The utilitarian concedes that, yes, the utility monster feels joy with cosmic intensity. And so, yes, by their calculation, we ought to shovel cookies, jobs, vacations, perhaps even organs into its maw until its scream of delight reaches the heavens. The numbers do not lie, they insist, even if our gut wrenches. The courtroom murmurs. A juror whispers, but what about fairness? Enter our second witness, the deontologist. Wearing crisp Kantian spectacles, they declare that morality cannot be reduced to a spreadsheet. Some acts are simply impermissible, no matter the outcomes. You cannot treat persons merely as means to an end, even if the end is universal euphoria. Kidnapping bakers to keep the monster fed violates human dignity. There are rights, duties, and categorical imperatives that draw bright red lines. If feeding the monster crosses them, then the monster must fast. The deontologist rests their case, confident that principles trump arithmetic. Before the jury can sigh in relief, a third figure steps forward, the virtue ethicist. They speak softly of character, of flourishing, of what it means to live a good life. What sort of people would we become, they ask, if we wired our hearts to a creature whose appetite annihilates our own? A society devoted to one super-pleasure connoisseur would grow hollow, servile, perhaps resentful. Cultivating courage, temperance, and wisdom requires more than chasing the highest score on the happiness meter. Virtue withers under the shadow of the monster's grin. So, does true human flourishing invite us to decline the monster's demand? 3 testimonies, 3 stories, 3 visions of the moral landscape, and 3 glaring contradictions. The utilitarian sees an elegant calculus, the deontologist sees inviolable rules, the virtue ethicist sees the texture of a life well lived. Which lens is clearest? Which compass points true north? The monster waits, its plate empty, its eyes vast and bright. But our investigation is not done. We consult another thought experiment, one suburb away from the monster, yet eerily related, Ursula K. Le Guin's city of Amlis. In this shining utopia, every citizen thrives, festivals bloom, music floats through sunlit streets. On one condition, a single child must remain locked in a windowless room, neglected, afraid, alone. The city's joy somehow depends on that suffering. Visitors are shown the child, most accept the bargain and return to the party, though some walk away into the unknown. Sound familiar? Swap the child for the monster, change the sign from negative to positive, and we see 2 sides of the same utilitarian coin. One immense happiness outweighs many small ones, or one deep misery can be buried beneath a mountain of delight. Both scenarios reveal a brutal symmetry and pure consequentialism. So witness after witness, case after case, what patterns emerge? First, happiness is slippery. We measure it with surveys, smiles, neurotransmitters, yet it refuses to sit still. Second, distribution matters. Add up total joy, and you might ignore who actually receives it. Third, our moral intuitions revolt when arithmetic overrides personhood. We do not like to be used as fuel, even for cosmic fireworks. At this juncture, a juror raises a hand. What if we tweak utilitarianism? Indeed, philosophers have. Rule utilitarianism says, follow rules that generally maximize happiness, even if in one odd case the math points elsewhere. Perhaps a rule like, do not sacrifice individuals against their will spares us the monster. Negative utilitarianism flips the goal, minimize suffering rather than maximize pleasure. But then the easiest path might be painless extinction, hardly a comforting verdict. Preference utilitarianism counts satisfaction of desires, yet the monster's desires still tower above ours. Each modification patches one hole, only to expose another. We might suspect the problem lies deeper, not in happiness arithmetic alone, but in how we value persons. Consider Rawls's veil of ignorance. If you did not know whether you would be the monster or an ordinary person, would you endorse a world of monster worship? Behind the veil, most would favor rules that protect them from being trampled. Equality of concern and respect re-enters the scene. The monster's claim weakens, not because its happiness is fake, but because fairness refuses to crown any one being supreme. Our investigation circles back to a courtroom now buzzing with ideas. The judge's gavel calls for closing statements. The utilitarian repeats in a softer voice, that numbers still matter. After all, choosing policies that reduce malaria deaths or lift millions from poverty saves real, calculable suffering. The deontologist replies that rights shield us even when the numbers tempt us. The virtue ethicist nods to the messy work of building character in everyday choices. So, dear audience, what is the verdict? The monster hovers in our collective imagination, a cautionary beast reminding us that moral clarity rarely comes from one metric alone. In public policy, in personal life, in late-night debates over pizza slices, we balance outcomes, duties, and virtues, sometimes without even noticing. The utility monster rips that balancing act into the open, daring us to choose. Do we feed it, chain it, or kindly show it the door? You, sitting wherever you are, hold the final vote. Would you press the button that diverts every resource to a single ecstatic being? Would you uphold an absolute right to cookie equality? Or would you search for a middle path, blurry but humane? Tell us in the comments below which ethical witness persuaded you and why. If this exploration resonates with you, if the dark side of the greater good sparks new questions in your mind, subscribe, share this video with a fellow thinker, ring the bell so you never miss another philosophical investigation. And for now, as always, keep thinking.